Good morning to you. For those of you who are on island in the diaspora, we also want to say good morning to those of you from the wider world tuning in to the Government Information Service. I am Lucia Joseph, as always, alongside Homer DeMark for this Wednesday morning. We are brewing lots to get into. We are going to give you a little bit about what's happening COVID-wise. But the better part of our programming for this morning, we're going Vive la Voix.
Vive la Voix.
That's what it is. We know that celebration date is for the 30th of August, and we started and we planned on continuing to really get you excited about the La Voix Festival despite COVID, and we know all of the impacts that it has brought, but certainly be able to enjoy the things that we've normally enjoyed and within the limits that COVID-19 has imposed on us.
So true. So speaking of COVID-19, we're getting those numbers out of the way?
We get numbers out of the way, yes, because we want to continue to feel good.
Yes.
So let's get the numbers out of the way. For the ministry yesterday reported new cases of 147, and that's out of a sample of 541.
So it looked like yesterday was just a breather.
Just a breather, and we're back to the record high numbers. And so, unfortunately, we also record two COVID-19s. And it is always very, very concerning. It is sad when we have to report those deaths. And of course, we want to extend condolences to the families of the two individuals who succumbed to COVID-19. There were also recoveries, though. We had some 27 individuals who recovered from COVID-19, the symptoms there. And to date, we have active cases of 1,546. 1,546. And we still have 4 individuals who are in need of critical care. They are at the respiratory hospital.
Right. In addition to that, Lisa, the Ministry of Health, of course, is remember that vaccination is one of the ways in which they could protect themselves and families against COVID. The Pfizer vaccine became available as of yesterday. As of Monday, and to date we've seen 239 individuals getting their first dose of Pfizer. Today is Wednesday, August 25th, so if you would like to get vaccinated, you can visit the VG Sports Complex today, as well as the Dennery School to get vaccinated. And as we have been mentioning, Lisa, we know and also get vaccinated at the various wellness centers within your community. You could make an appointment to get vaccinated free of charge, and you can look out for the mobile vaccination bus which goes through the various communities and get yourself vaccinated as well.
And it is important, as always, to consult with your physician. Call up a doctor, and any concerns that you may have, any questions that you may have, you can pose those there to make sure that you're informed when you're going out to get that jab, because information is over speculation. We'll do it all the time. Just get informed, don't speculate, get the information from the sources who can provide you with that information.
Very important.
So what else do we have brewing, Herma?
You know, yesterday we were talking about agriculture and the developments that we've been making in the agricultural industry, and I came across an article which speaks well to, of course, the Ministry of Health, of Agriculture, and their drive to establish our food security and to improve certain sectors, the cocoa industry being one of them. So they've subsidized cocoa plants for farmers to $2 per plant, which is very, very affordable, and that is in an effort to ensure that we get our cocoa industry and booming again, because right now they are recording very low numbers of production. So farmers can, of course, get in contact with the extension officers to ensure that they get in on that $2 per plant if they would like to purchase their plants. And the plants are available in Soufrière at the propagation station in Soufrière, and that is near Myers Bridge. So that is one of the things coming out of the Ministry of Agriculture. And I was saying this earlier, and a coworker who will remain unnamed said, I don't know the last time I had cocoa. It's been a while. I've been craving cocoa. And I don't think she's looking for the chocolate, you know, the pods and how sweet it is.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think that's a good push in terms of the agricultural industry. And it's one thing that I enjoyed as a child as well, breaking cocoa and having
being able to get back
enjoy that. That was
memories.
Really good. That was really good. So that's one of the out of the Ministry of Agriculture. And for persons interested in education and furthering their education, the ministry, well, there is actually a scholarship program available from the Swiss government, and that is available to persons from over 180 countries. And for further information on that, it's for research, PhD, or postdoctoral studies. But for more information on that, of course, you can visit the government website to get further information on that if you are interested in qualifying or applying, rather, for
that scholarship. That sounds wonderful.
Yeah, so these are a few things.
And with the cocoa industry, I know that for quite a number of years, we've been struggling to really get to boom once and you know, chocolate or just, you know, cocoa needed in so many products right now. And so it's a hot commodity.
We see a lot of the international market coming up.
Yes, so we're hoping that, like our CMOS, we can have our cocoa farmers, that they too can be able to earn from that lucrative business there on the international stage. Now, Omar, we don't want to delay anymore, and we want to be able to bring the fun on this Wednesday. You know, meek, and so sometimes you get into a little bit of a slump.
You need a little boost. I think this morning, my morning is going to be the boost. Yeah.
We're going to give the boost right now, and you know that for the month of August, traditionally, we would have had celebrations across communities and at schools as well. Well, not schools would have been closed, but yes, the community groups will be celebrating the Lawas. We don't have that this time around, again, with COVID-19. And so we have in studio with us a member of the Laborie Lawas group. We'll be discussing Lawas, and it's not just, you know, confined to just the Lawas. This is an individual, it's a community worker, and so he has great ties in the community. So he's able to discuss issues from the length and breadth, whether it be local, regional, international, and we'll be able to discuss Lawas in its historical context, its relevance to today's society, and how perhaps we can even begin to leverage the Lawas Festival or the flower festivals of St. Lucia in order for us to be able to perhaps you know, bring the society closer together. Commercially, what can we do with it? Things of that sort. And we'll also have some performances for you as well. So it's going to be an all-around boost for Wednesday. We have all of that right after this break.
Papa, nous ka oui merci pour grande tradition culturelle ça là aux aban nous ka mando aujourd'hui pour voir la sagesse sous Alvin et puis Wen Jenny bayo la force et puis kouai pour yo jide Lawas Laborie avec l'honneur et la joie nous ka mande c'est quoi ça là à nos garçons notre Seigneur Jésus-Christ, esprit soit-il.
Hey, we at war with the virus, ready to harm us. Panic is not the answer. We can win this together.
Often used hand sanitizer.
sanitizer. Better yet, use soap and water.
We must protect each other if we are to beat this corona.
Together let us win. Be a soldier for St. Lucia. Together let us win this war. Be a soldier, together we can beat this corona.
So you don't become the next case. Avoid touching your face. I'm sure you've been told so. Handshakes and hugging are up. No, no.
Advice give you the please. Cover your mouth and your nose if you cover sneeze.
Practice social distancing and avoid large social gatherings.
Together let us win this war. Be a soldier for St. Lucia. Together let us win this war. St. Lucia, be a soldier. Together we can beat this corona.
For further information, please contact the hotline at 311 or the Bureau of Health Education at 468-5349.
Thank you so much for staying with us. We're getting into that whole fun part for the Wednesday. And as promised, we have with us Mr. Lucius Ellevic of the Laborie, Lawar's group, Laborie, in the house. And before, as we went to break, that was Mr. Lucius Ellevic there performing. What were those, right? What were those? Ceremonial?
Yes, I think that was 2012. We had the coronation of a new king and queen.
Oh, wow.
And we actually mimicked the coronation of Elizabeth. I actually went to, either it was Google or YouTube, and look at the script and try, as I said, to mimic the whole performance in terms of at that time. It would have been the lead celebrant would have been the Archbishop of Canterbury. Yeah, would be the head of the Anglican Church. So in that capacity, there as Mosela was.
And may I add that the dress, you got it down to the T.
Okay, yes, I had a seamstress. Yes, we did try the costuming. We spent quite a bit of time and effort the costuming for that event. So it was a grand spectacle, and for a short while, it did kind of resuscitate Laros in the community, the new perspective, the new dimensions. And from then on, we have been associated, and we continue to be associated with Laros, in Laborie. And the idea was, we understood its importance even back then. Laros was not just a flower festival with a particular celebration. From a kind of sociological perspective, from a kind of wider societal perspective, the Flower Festival provided more. It was rural based, so then it was something that was definitely looked forward to. Interestingly, at that time, there was minimal government support, interference, intervention, either budgetary support, technical support, or otherwise. And was actually celebrated on a grander scale than now. And so then one asks what contributes, or what could probably explain the transition to what it is now vis-a-vis what it was then. And I think it's a kind of social evolutionary process that from a functionalist perspective, was what it's doing for the society. Other institutions in society are probably performing that role.
Like what? Because for us, for Homer and myself, I'm sure Homer's thinking, like, what would we be?
Exactly.
Because we simply see the flower festival as really a spectacle, and more than that. But from what you're beginning to say, it would seem like flower festivals were deeply rooted in the community, and it was absolutely a way of life and a manner of life as well.
Okay, yes. From the question of rule, there's a kind of rule of solidarity. You become to that group, and then there's that group identity. There was the question of that element of benevolence, where members of that group supported each other in times of difficulty. And also, there was, even within the society itself, there was a question of the kind of, it's not just honor, but kind of regard that was given to, let us say, the king or the queen of that group, of that Laros group. And that person actually had functions in that society beyond just Laros king or Laros queen. I can recall in my community of Laborie, we had one, I could probably mention his name, Laborie. Laborie, actually, they call themselves the royal family. His wife was queen, and he had daughters, princess. He had sons, princes. So it was actually the royal family. And then you recall that they were also instrumental and also a main player in what we call the society, these burial societies that existed in, some of them still do exist in some of our communities, but that was a benevolent aspect of it. And I recall there were situations where Laborie was called to arbitrate on disputes in the community.
Really?
That person's cabwit went into that other person's garden, and that person is saying he wants redress for the loss of his plants, and that guy is saying no. And in the end, when it reaches an impasse, he brought the case to Laborie, and Laborie would adjudicate not in his role as Wala was, but because of the kind of regard persons had for him. And so they would trust his wisdom, they would trust his decision, and the word of Laborie was final.
So it's almost like a sort of base of the Yoruba, because it would seem that way, that it's like a sort of community.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yes. So in that kind of a way. So then if you have to, as I said, dissect these societies, these bit Laros or Margaret, it goes beyond just the celebration of a Twantau or 17 October. And as I was saying, as society moved on, then we had other forms of dispute resolution. Instead of a living increase, we now have health insurance, we now have burial insurance. So then the kind of roles, these socioeconomic roles of these societies have been taken over by other functionaries in society. So it kind of was relegated more to the kind of entertainment. And then you would find that the transmission mechanism, either through socialization or otherwise, was probably weak. So then there's that kind of generational issue where Stalwart of Laos was not able to even convince his or her daughter to continue to participate with the celebration. So then it was almost kind of a way time-stamped, date-stamped. And it probably, I don't find any problem with it. Now probably it's a challenge to us. If we think it is important to us, how can now we fit it in this milieu that we live in 2021? And that probably is the challenge. And but yes, if one probably even wants to talk about the Laros, there are several perspectives that history. So probably I'll just talk about a history of Laros. Okay. One of the histories, or one of the accounts of Laros. Persons have the view, either researchers or otherwise, of the view that it actually developed from the whole society of slavery, the whole, and the idea was to mimic the king's court, to mimic the queen's court. And so you find that most of the courtiers are reflected in the Laros group. You had the monarchs, you had, and even from the aristocracy, you had the dukes, you had whatever names you could come up with, captains, if it is a question of. So yes, it actually mimicked the courts of the monarchy. And particularly in the days of colonialization, persons were not happy with that. How dare you come and mimic Her Majesty's or His Majesty's court?
Royal court.
And then so the so-called upper echelons found it distasteful, and at some times they did attempt to discontinue it, And interestingly, St. Lucia at the time, being predominantly Catholic, even some of the Catholic priests hated that thing. But over time, it became more accepted into society and then probably less threatening. And you find that even the church itself started to support and condone it and even allowed the church service to be held and provided the blessings for it. So the question still remains, and we hear it, of what relevance is, let us say, the celebration of Laros to St. Lucia maybe in the year 2021. I would posit that there is a segment of society that still consume Laros, assuming if you consider Laros to be a protocol service, there's still that segment of society who enjoy it, who would tell you they look forward to it. And if nothing else, I think we should continue to celebrate at least for these people. We have our older people who become quite sense of nostalgia, and they tell you they grew up with it, and they'll probably even get goosebumps even just speaking about how their grandparents would adorn and deck and how they would prepare for it. So I think, yes, it is still part of what makes us St. Lucian. It might not probably be widespread. There is a whole question of the generational aspect to it. As I said, the further back we go, probably the more appreciative it may be. And so, yes, I probably have been born on the threshold, Jean-Laurent Jordi. So almost like Jana's daughter. So I was able to see from both perspectives, the Jean-Laurent and also the Jean Jordi. So yes, I do enjoy it thoroughly. And I think that in Laborie, it is still it creates some kind of a binding force. Those of us who still enjoy it, we look forward to it, we contribute to it. And what I call clean fun. I've never seen anybody in Laos group and being drunk and rolling around and cursing and getting. I say clean fun. You come and you dance your guts out, you sing your guts out, whether you can sing or not, and you leave home and then you feel contented that probably after a hard day, you were able to regale yourself, you were able to enjoy part of our cultural heritage.
So with that being said, let's take in some Roger, a sample there of a performance from the Laos group. Hopefully it's Laborie.
How do you like your...
Seeing that you're performing all of that duty there. So when we talk about being able to make the transition or passing on that heritage, the appreciation for it, how is Laborie? Because you're a very, very vibrant community down in Laborie. How have you been able to really have the younger generation coexist alongside the older generation and that passing on of the appreciation and knowledge?
Yes, it is actually a difficult challenge, what I call the transmission mechanism. The greatest source of that transmission has to be kind of socialization. Children learn the culture of their society through the socialization, and the different agents of socialization. And the leading one and the strongest one has to be the family. So you find that if the family now has very little regard for it, then other institutions like, let's say, education and the school takes it up So it is actually a dicey phenomenon. What we did some time ago was to make it nice and catchy and something that younger people would like to identify with. So then that coronation, as I said, we had a host of young people having different roles. I remember one of the things I even experimented with, when I say I, the Laborie Laros Society experimented with, was even some kind of various beats for Laros songs to see how appealing it would be. Even though I remember, we even had a fashion show, a Laros fashion show, and we had a techno beat that was the beat that how you call them, the models had to strut to. So we tried a number of things over the years. And one of the things, even we recorded songs, one of the things we find that even sustaining it, it is an oral tradition. One of the things we did to kind of sustain and perpetuate was actually recording. We had a recording of a number of Laros songs. And for our contribution this year, in the midst of COVID, we will actually be uploading quite a bit of footage and songs to a YouTube channel that we are hoping to be ready in time for Twatao. I think presently in St. Lucia, we, especially now with the demise of the Folk Research Center, we might probably be one of the entities with, maybe of NTN, but quite a bit of footage. So I think we should prepare it and record it and have it accessible for all those who probably may be interested. And it could just be from a sense of nostalgia. You go through, and you know what part of St. Lucia really, really enjoy Laros now? The diaspora.
I can imagine,
Yes.
right?
There's that feeling of longing to be home at that
yes.
time, and then you go to a YouTube channel or you go wherever, and you see that thing, and then you probably are able to even identify relatives. You're able to. So yes, there's that feeling of wow, yes, I'm happy to be a St. Lucian living in Brooklyn. I'm happy to be a St. Lucian living in the UK.
And that gives the St. Lucia's culture a whole new life, does it?
Okay, most definitely, because the question of that sense of belonging and identity, that aspect of our culture. Yes, our anthem says, wheresoever you may roam,
True.
love will love your island home. And these are some of the little tidbits that you can use to reinforce that love for St. Lucia. So, Sebuna and Pakite la was la tombe, and gade ki mwen nou sa bouye, pe kon ipe, presentement nou situation COVID la, nou ka di dat ki pese la kayou même, let ton tawa ive, chanson, and kilte a viva.
You know, Mr. Ellevic, you've given us so much information, things that you've clarified a lot of questions that I had, particularly speaking about the support system that the Laros community or society provided, and that's possibly why, you know, it's not as vibrant as it is, as it was in the past. You know, a lot of these needs are now being fulfilled by other entities. That makes so much sense. But there are a few things that, you know, I've always gotten into arguments about. For example, how do you become a Laros? You become a La Marguerite, and from what I know, it's you know, close to your birthday, whichever festival your birthday falls closer to. You're born a La Rose or born a La Marguerite, or if your family is predominantly La Rose or La Marguerite, that's how, you know, it happened. So, in terms of that, can you provide any clarity?
Okay, yes. Again, the word I like to use, socialization. We have political socialization, you have Tutsot culture socialization. So then you have socialization to the Flower Festival. There's a very good chance that if your parents were Margaret, you would be socialized to the way of life of Margaret. There's a very good chance that if you were if your parents, that you would be socialized. And if you listen to, even to our chants and Chatwell, and tell them, but you seem to have a large repertoire of songs, a large repertoire of songs. Tell you, yes, I used to go to the seances with my grandmother. I used to sit under the chair. So then that is the whole process of socialization. And over time, people do change. I remember there was that lady who she's deceased now from Laborie. She had a song that, if fete la was pour 9 l'année, et qu'après ça, il quittait la was like Margaret. And now she's giving my allowance me. She says she knows all our divisiveness. And this is one of the reasons why she left, because we were so divisive and mean and what have you. So she left and she joined her Margaret. So yes, and presently now, what we do, we actually go about recruiting people. And interesting in Laborie, we have where we role play. I'm also Margaret.
Oh, really?
Yes, I'm the Margaret priest.
You are struggling.
So then the question is, and again, that is evident of the transition.
Right.
Okay? Before it was tipped, it was partisan, it was divided. There was actually at the shop in Laborie, and he actually had a sign saying that no Margaret should enter his shop. He wanted to sell them. He hated these people so badly. He insisted that you should not even come to his shop. He will not serve you. Because we in Laborie, we know everybody was Margaret. We know everybody. So then no one was after they say, Margaret, c'est pas vin côté moi. Na m'offre pas ba moi manger. But we are saying the transition, and then even when you look at that song, Limine, Margaret song, it says, "Set Margaret as you look up with the ni baila was ek Margaret." So now that divisiveness, and also the group sizes are so small that if you perpetuate it, it would be almost self-defeating, almost suicidal to think you could just stick. So in we come up with the term magos.
Magos.
Yeah, so then during the month of leading up to Tontau, most of us are not, some people insist they're not joining. I am exclusively Lawas, or I am exclusively Margaret. But people like me and a host of others, we straddle both. So Tontau, I go and make endless noise and give Margaret endless damn, mépris, and whatever, I can see them. And then when October comes now, we down gaily and assume another costume, and then we give flowers down. So in the end, you fulfill the need of trying to see how well you could sustain and persevere with the art form.
So we want to, Roger, if we can take in another performance, and then when we come back, I really want to get a few things clarified, and you can give this one some thought when we get back. Why the tension between the two? That's important. I need to get that clarified. So, Roger, let's take in another performance, and then we'll come on back with the discussion. And if not, what were they singing?
So then they were just actually, I'm not sure whether it was actually a coronation event, but that song is talking about the coronation of a particular queen, Leota. So it's a whole question of call and response, the Chanteau de Chantwell calls and the reporter's response, and yes.
All right. So back to the question, the tension between the two beautiful flowers.
Interestingly, there's a whole element of class involved in it. Almost in most of our communities, Margaret seemed to have the more elite, belonging to the elite class, probably even having higher per capita income, having higher rate of literacy, and they were always more of finesse.
You can tell, eh? You can tell in the personality of the flowers.
Okay.
You can get that.
And then
But just looking at
No, from the songs and
the songs.
and yes, and the various.
let us just kind of reinforce what you just said. Let's look at the song. La voix zot belle, mais zot pas indiqué. La voix zot belle, mais zot pas créolisé. And when you look at the whole, that particular song, that's a Margaret song. La voix zot belle, mais zot pas indiqué. La voix mais zot pas créolisé. The whole question of creolization was an adaptation function. When the days of we've been a colony of Britain, when you let us say plantation owner came to the region, you had to adapt. You had to become creolized. Your way of life in Spain, in Portugal, in England so then from a sociological point of view, you had to change a few things so as to be able to succeed and live. So then here la was des wagons, classless, noise. Even at church they make noise. They're drunk, they this and that. They get to creolize, to understand that you have to adapt from that to a more finesse and more societal acceptable ways. And so we have that thing. And then when you look at even we in Laos, Oliver was for the fun. Margaret would never be in a rum shop. Only now Margaret starts to be in a rum shop. Well, you could take one and we did not really care with that. Margaret would not dance. They would normally have their festival in somebody's living room. You have to be prim and proper in that person's living room and whatever. Did we care about that? No. So you find that the Mepu started to escalate. And then the more Mepu you give, the greater the hatred. Okay? So then you become more polarized. Because when you say I'm ignorant, I'm not creolized, and then the other thing, they were always British. They always say, "Moi parti là, moi sorti au l'Angleterre." And then what they say, the vessel they alighted from, in those, the early song had Queen Victoria Regina. It was ships. He said the bâtiment as Queen Victoria Regina. And then when they alight, they say, our golden flag is in our hands. So, in other words, no, they cannot align themselves with Laros. So then in the end, it is like somebody said, these children are terrible. When attacked, they defend themselves. So when we Laros get attacked, we defend ourselves. When Margaret gets attacked, they defend themselves. And so you get that polarity and people really, and it becomes very, very mean, you know.
You're starting to change my feel about the two festivals, because I've always admired that about the Margaret festival, the finesse, and I did not understand where it came from. But now that he's explaining it to me, what I'm getting from that is La Rosa's true to the culture of celebration and the culture of we are who we are, and we're just going to embrace that. And I'm feeling a little cheated right now, to be honest.
Yes, that is yes, good point. That is how it is. So then yes, it was also steeped into class, and you even go down, if you want to be political, into which party we support.
Oh really?
Oh yeah. Jean-Marguerite, it could even go down. It could even go down that realm.
Because the flower festivals, and I said it earlier, it really sort of mirrors what life is in the community, in our wider society. But I want to take the discussion towards how we can sustain the interest at the community level, at the national level, in the two flower festivals.
Okay, sustenance, I cannot claim that I have the panacea to that disease in terms of, it is a kind of iterative, try many things, hold fast, which is good. We try different modalities, as I said, but one of the important aspect of it is the youth involvement, and that goes without saying. If you want to sustain it, there must be that transmission from the older to the younger. But then you have the modality, the mode. What is the mechanism for that transmission? In a digital age, how do you make it appealing to a child who just enjoys fun? Okay, like I know a young man who tells you everything you have in society in terms of the institutions and the different role. He gets it from his computer. He's not lonely. He plays with people around the world. He is academically challenged. He gets academically stimulating material to deal with. As again, if you talk about loneliness, he's not lonely. He feels that. So how do you then, a person like that, in what modality do you present this flower festival such that they would say, yes, I would like to associate or identify with it? So this is a kind of work in progress. And whereas we may not have the answers, but I think the question of how we celebrate, I think we probably want to make it a little tastier than
what it is now.
What it is now. And particularly in terms of the shut and shutwells, I think that has to be a good source of appeal. Persons who can sing, and even the repertoire of songs, starting to write some new songs. I have written songs for both Laros and Margaret. Our challenge in Laborie is shut and shutwells. So whereas, yes, I write, in fact, actually I wrote a song for Margaret mimicking one of the classical, that Elizabethan serenade. I actually took that rhythm. It's a waltz, and actually wrote a Margaret song. It's a little difficult to sing, and I just could not get somebody to sing it. So we are saying, let us continue with the effort. At Laborie Credit Union, we give budgetary support. I put it in my budget every year. X amount for Laros, X amount, it's equal. So then don't come and think that I prefer one
over the other.
That's very nice.
But every year...
But he's struggling, so we understand.
You put X amount to support Margaret and X amount to support Laros. In the bid that they cannot just say that they are not doing anything because of the absence of financial resources or so. So I perceive that in Laborie we will be celebrating both these flower festivals for a long time, and I'm hoping that what we call validated learning, that whatever we do, we come up with a hypothesis. Young people would enjoy Laros if it is in that form. You do it in that form, and then you interrogate it, you learn from it, you see whether or not there's validated learning, whether that hypothesis was stood true, and then we move it from it. So there's a whole lot of experiments from that kind of perspective, a small batch, so to speak. Even before, so I'm saying, even before we look at a kind of a national strategy, let each community come up with its own strategies, and then we could probably formulate some kind of best learning, best practices. But I think it is incumbent on each community to look at how we could come up with new hypotheses, put it into the Laros, and implement it. When we're questioning first, when we're fair, a guy can buy la
just have to try it.
It's an iterative approach. It is not that take 3 tablets and the belly ache will go. No, you have to try a thing, learn from it, try a thing and learn from it, yes. And in trying it, you should set yourself objectives, what it is you want, whether it is an increase in participation of young people or whatever. You should have some kind of KPI, key performance indicators that you could use to determine whether or not the efforts are actually meeting the objectives.
So, something, and I'm thinking perhaps we can even have classes on the flower festivals. And at one point, the Folk Research Center used to do some Creole classes. And so perhaps people now need to have, as you say, maybe even if it's an online program where you can actually learn and perhaps learn the songs, because I would love to learn how the songs, maybe biting my tongue a bit when I'm doing it, but I have fun trying, and that's the whole point.
I think, yes, we presently have on the CSEC syllabus arts. I'm not familiar with it, at least while I taught Sapatela, theater arts Sapatela.
Times have changed.
Sexy, but I might be a theater arts. But now theater arts as part of the subject area. So I think maybe I don't, as again, I'm not familiar with the curriculum, but I think somebody they could have some ways of probably studying Laros, hosting a Laros festival, hosting a so that's something that probably theater art teachers could probably look at and see as part of perpetuating that aspect of our culture, how we could intertwine it, link it with the academics.
True. And earlier on I mentioned the leveraging the festivals. How do you see us being able to do that? Because now everything, you use every possible thing. It's not just about earning that little dollar within community, having it circulate, but also too in being able to position yourself globally in the marketplace. Tourism is big for us. So how do you see us being able to use the flower festivals more in order to differentiate our space in the marketplace for tourism?
Okay, yes, at Laborie, we have that idea. It's actually documented, the whole question of how do you link cultural activities, cultural architecture to create a viable community-based tourism sector. I think in St. Lucia, this could be a differentiating activity from community to community. The question of persons coming, let's say, coming to Laborie, and you could go to a cabaret where that's the only music you'll hear for the night. You won't hear reggae, you won't hear calypso, you won't hear boom boom, you won't hear R&B. So that particular person who would probably want to do our rustic and quaint way of entertaining ourselves could come to that particular cabaret, and that particular cabaret would have that on its menu, on its offering. That is the entertainment. And it has to be small, because you do not want a whole seance going there and anything. But the idea is what we are, the service offering, the product offering is Lars or Margaret on a small scale. Okay, so then it is almost, if you go to a place like New Orleans and one of these little communities and you go to a little thing there, you actually see a little group there and something like that. So it actually adds depth and length to the tourism product. Yes, so it adds depth and length to the tourism product, and it is not for mass tourism. We have the Airbnb, and then the question of you visit a community, and then what else? Okay, what do you hope to see? What do you go to? How do you intermingle? How do you get entertained? So these are the little tidbits that can be used to, and one of the things there is in all kind of business, the greatest mechanism has to be with the report of a satisfied user of a product, the report of a satisfied consumer of a product. So somebody comes to Brazil, Laborie, or whatever, and was satisfied with that, and no, because his bevins would generally have kind of the same taste as he. So oh boy, I went to that in Laborie and they had that. So when I go to New Orleans or when I go to Cotenalia, I'll report that how happy I was. And okay, so then I think some emphasis should be done. And I also believe, interestingly, I don't believe that's the role of government now. That has to be the role of communities. Unfortunately, I think government allocator of resources and things of that sort. You want it at that micro level, at that community-based level. Yes, there can be the role of government, particularly let us from the point of view of the kind of village council or the city.
There needs to be some institutional support.
Yes, some kind of institutional support. But do not think it should be kind of a top-down. I do appreciate the thing that you come up with a consultant that will come and tell me, well, yes, he could probably add some little value to me, but I doubt very much he could tell me how I could make village tourism successful in Laborie. Out of my sheer doubts.
And so it has to be authentically, organically within the community.
Take an inventory of what you have. Even the same little BTs we learn at university, the SWOT analysis. A little SWOT analysis of your community, Canries, Ancillary, Laborie, VA4. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? What are your things? What it is that you could offer? What it is that persons are leaving the metropolis to come to your place for? What can you? And again, I'm saying you test. There's what you call an MVP, a minimal value product. Even before you go about large scale, test a little something. Because in the end, you might be producing something that nobody wants. And you spend endless money and endless time and resources on producing something that nobody wants, a particular perspective of community tourism that nobody wants. So you come up with a little thing, a minimal value product. So you say that on average, these people would want X and Y, you offer it. And then that's where the whole question of the validated learning. So you're coming up with a hypothesis that generally the knapsack traveler from Germany would appreciate X, Y, Z. So I offer it and I tell that knapsack traveler in Germany that is available in Laborie. He comes down, you monitor him, you do the M&E, you evaluate, you think there, you get it back, and then you tweak it until maybe even what you thought they wanted, hey, that's a pass you play. And here you're adding value to something, c'est pas ça you voulez. So I think arguing that we need to do that in small batches at the community level, not just exclude St. Lucia, small batches, Laborie, try it.
See what really comes out of that.
Validated learning and improve on it, and yes.
All right. I want to thank you so much. It has been such an eye-opening morning. It has been enjoyable. Lots of information coming out there, very varying perspectives. So we want to thank you so much, Mr. Lucius Ellevic of the Laborie Law Society. I heard you say society and not group. So we want to thank you so much for that. And Homer, we want to be able to take in a short performance as on our way out. So we want to tell St. Lucia, see you tomorrow on Thursday. Enjoy the performance towards the end.